So a very good morning to you. This is EA300B, and this is Dr. Sam Hamdul, and this is the master class, the third master class I gather. Remember, I said that this is also a replacement of the regular class that we should have done on Monday. We couldn't do it for obvious reasons. It was the National Day, and we're doing it today. So we may have people from other classes, that's fine. We're doing the same thing. So what is it that we're doing today or this morning? We're doing Voices in the Park. Today marks the end of our discussion of Voices in the Park. Started early on, and today we're finishing things off so that we can start um, the other side of truth next week, inshallah. What did we do so far? We have done a number of things. We have read the text together, I remember. I think we did it in class, and we also did it here in the master class. Again, the focus is on maintaining this balance between the text and the image, and I think we have come a long way in this regard. We now know that if we talk about the picture book, there is no way we can ignore the images. The images are sometimes, if not as important, they are more important. You cannot really figure out the meaning and in its fullness unless you kind of engage with the images and pictures. And we have given examples of just that, especially when we spoke about the Tale of Peter Rabbit. So we're adopting the same methodology. If we want a full understanding of the text, we need to always engage with the image. Somebody is writing something, so please come to the mic if you have something to share with us. Okay, does this do you guys all share the sentiment? Is my voice too low, like somebody is saying? Am I audible
No,
enough?
just a little bit, not
No.
Okay, let me do something. Can you hear me now? Am I doing better now? Tell me.
Yes, doctor.
Better, way better than perhaps 5 minutes ago.
yes.
Okay, because we're recording the class and we don't want anything unrecorded. Yani if there's something that I can do with my headset, I can always handle that. Anyway, I was talking about Voices in the Park. Again, like always, now that we have read the two picture books, and if we have to kind of vote for the best, which of them is better than the other? I think I asked you this question, and I'm asking you again because you may have revisited the text. You may have read it again. So if you think that the Tale of Peter Rabbit is better than the other one, raise your hand. Okay. Okay. Zuhur is the only one who is raising her hand. So and Layan. Okay. So I take it that the rest of us are for Voices in the Park. Drop your hand, Layan. Drop your hand. Okay, let me ask you about Voices in the Park. What is it that you find appealing about this one? What is it that you found? Perhaps you had little experience with picture books, with the Tale of Peter Rabbit, and this may have kind of stopped you from appreciating it fully. Now that you have known the codes, now that we have been in discussion about picture books and their elements for so long, I think you are in a better position to tell us about your experience with the second one, Voices in the Park. So what is it that you appreciate most about Voices in the Park? Come to the mic and share with us. Zuhur, go ahead.
I like how it shows the different point of view of other of people, like how everyone see life and think of it, and like from different way than others.
Yeah, different perspectives,
Yeah.
which means that, truth is all over the place, is up for grabs, like I always say, which means that you only see things from your own vision, from your own angle of vision, which does not necessarily mean that other people may share this same angle of vision, right? So we see things from our different perspectives, um, you know, based on our background, educational, racial, our gender, our demographics, whether we're young or old. So these are all factors that come into play when we assess something. Okay, so this is perhaps one of the literacies, the things that we need to kind of appreciate and consider, the idea that people have to approach issues and things from different perspectives. I mean, they would and they should tolerate other people's views and opinions, right? Yeah. So truth is not absolute anymore in the postmodern world, right? Yeah. Okay, somebody else was raising her hand. Was it only Zuhur? So what is it that you appreciate most about Voices in the Park so far? I know it's a work in progress and you're still reading and rereading, which is fine, but at least you came up with something, right? What is this something that you came up with? Yeah, it's early. I know it's 8 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, okay. So Voices in the Park. I also remember very vividly, and I also reminded you this morning to go and watch this very excellent video on Voices in the Park. It sums up the whole idea. Actually, it doesn't sum it up. It actually gives us so many significant and relevant details. Have you watched the video? Yeah, Noura. Are you trying? Are you saying
Uh,
yes or yeah? Go ahead.
yes, I watch it, but I want to say something
Yeah, say
that
something.
I like about the voices in the park is the illustration that the author give us
Mm-hmm.
because he give us a hidden meanings and draw something very small and give us something uh, another thing like um, another like stories in his story. So
You
this is
mean,
what I like.
yeah, when you spoke about colors, you spoke about colors, right? You mean that the colors are very suggestive?
Yes, the colors,
Uh,
and also
mm,
he draws some stories that um, he draws some stories in his story. I
yes.
forgot
Yeah.
the name.
Stories within stories. That's
Yeah.
interesting. And you also spoke about hidden meaning. You need to, and I'm talking obviously to everyone, you need to remember this is a postmodern piece of work, and postmodernism is about play. Yeah, this is one of the characteristics of the postmodern art and literature, the idea of play, the fact that play on the literal sense and also on the perhaps the abstract sense. I mean, the writer plays with the reader, plays in the sense that he keeps things hidden. He drops like a clue, and he wants you to do the work and figure it out. Remember when we spoke about the idea of intertextuality and visual intertextuality? So intertextuality is about having those um, references to other work. You may not know about this other work. So it's a kind of play. If you think that something is or needs perhaps some kind of research from outside that, this is the kind of game that the writer may play with his readers. I mean, he doesn't give them things ready made and easy. He wants them to think and rethink, and so some parts are reworkings of other things that are taken from outside the text. So this is what we call intertextuality, and this is what we call visual intertextuality if the reference is not to another text. If the reference from outside or to the outside world is not is not a reference to perhaps a literary work. It can be a painting, it can be a piece of sculpture, it can be so many artistic things. So that's very interesting. Thank you, Noura. Again, I'll come back to my question about the documentary that you have seen or watched on Voices in the Park. Have we all watched this kind of documentary? Because it's very significant and very relevant. You're missing a lot if you haven't done so, and if you keep missing it, I promise you're going to miss out on a lot of things. So how many have watched? Because this is not the first time that I remind you. I reminded you half an hour, perhaps 45 minutes before the class today or this morning. I also reminded you in the past. So if you have watched the video, raise your hand. Okay. So only 3 people. I can see Zuhur, Noura, and Lana. Where is the rest? Very strange. And Rania. Okay. So now that you have watched the video and now that you have read the text or the picture book, how much do you know about Voices in the Park? What is so distinctive about it? What is it that you found in Voices in the Park, but you didn't find in um, The Tale of Peter Rabbit, if we make those comparisons between the two? In terms of narrative. Of course, the two of them are called visual narratives because we have narrative, which means we have a story, but it's a part of it is visual, part of it is pictorial. You have images and illustrations. That's why we call it visual narrative. So, do we have a story to tell in Voices in the Park? Is it as straightforward as the story in The Tale of Peter Rabbit? I'm asking everyone. Yeah, Zuhur. Do we have
No,
a
it's not.
story? Ah, yes, it's not.
Yeah,
So,
because
yeah, go ahead.
four voices.
Yes,
This is different from Peter Rabbit.
yes. In The Tale of Peter Rabbit, you have only one narrator, right?
Yeah.
But this time around, you have four narrators, right? Yeah, this is true. Okay, is it as clear in terms of structure where we have a clear beginning, you have a middle, and you have an end? Lana, go ahead.
The Voice in the Park is an excellent book for adults because focus on deep themes and class and talk about them.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, thank you,
In
Lana.
the picture, yeah, okay.
Yeah, go on. Sorry. Yeah, go on.
Picture shows relationship between the class.
Different classes. We have different
Yeah,
classes. You have high
different
class,
relationship.
middle. You have, yeah, okay. So
Yeah,
you have, yes,
relationship between mother and Charles.
her son. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. Mumtaz. Thank you so much, Yelena. Noor, you're raising your hand.
Yes, I think the main difference between the two stories, that the Voices in the Park, uh, it has a unique style of writing because the author used every font for every narrator.
Mm-hmm.
So like the mother, elegant and high class, and Charles, the boy, is weak and kind of like non-seen. So
Interesting.
this is the main difference, I think.
Yeah, this is one of the differences. Obviously, there are so many differences between them. You need to also remember that The Tale of Peter Rabbit is a modern piece of work, while Voices in the Park is a postmodern piece of work. Again, postmodernity is totally different in terms of what it brings to the literature. When we talk about, and these are some of the elements that we're going to address ourselves to later today. But it's different in this aspect. It's postmodernism, if you like. Okay, so we have a lot to share. Perhaps this is also very clear. In postmodern literature and art, we also focus, when it comes to literature, we focus on what we call paratext. So it's not the text and full stop. It's not the words or the pictures within or corresponding to the text. We also have what we call paratext, and paratext is whatever is surrounding the text, and whatever is surrounding the text can be details about the publisher, can be how the title of the book is kind of given, any details that you may have thought irrelevant in the past is now very relevant and very important. We're talking about publishers, we're talking about the place where the picture book is published. We talk about anything you used to consider outside the text is deeply uh, uh, linked to the text in some way, as we're going to see. Okay, so what do we need now? I think because we have spoken a lot about this idea of postmodernism, and there is an article and an essay on postmodernism, and it's called Postmodern Experiments. The only problem that we have with this kind of article is that the illustrations and the examples are given from other picture books and from other children's literature books, not Voices in the Park, um, which I'm saying that this is not very good, but I'm in the same breath, I'm saying that this is also good because it gives us the opportunity to think for ourselves, to go and apply whatever ideas in the article to Voices in the Park without being or having the things spoiled for us because other people are saying this or that. So what is perhaps interesting about the article would be the idea that the when it comes to applying the elements, it doesn't apply them to Voices in the Park. So we can have our fresh thoughts and fresh application to Voices in the Park. Okay, so let's have we have a slide on the article, and then I would like you to read the article, the original article on your own, and then apply the ideas therein to Voices in the Park. Let me give you uh, the things that we have. So, Alex, so this is the article that I'm talking to you about. And it's Postmodern Experiments by Pete Goldstone. I'll share the article with you on the WhatsApp group and also on the shared folder that we have. It's a very interesting one. Again, the illustrations and examples are given from other, picture books, but that's fine. We can always read the ideas and then apply them to our context. And our context here would be Voices in the Park. So this is the first one that I would like you to read. This is an analysis. We're going to do it together, and then I'll also share it with you. This is another, analysis. Again, it's more perhaps on Voices in the Park, and we have those slides on, like I said, on postmodern picture books. And again, the application is to another or to other pieces of work, and that's fine again. Okay, let's start with this part. Again, I would like you, now that you have read the text twice, I would like you to always be reminded of situations and incidents in Voices in the Park. I mean, you can always relate whatever we're going to discuss here to whatever happens in Voices in the Park. So again, we're talking about postmodernism. And this is obviously the context. The context is postmodernism because the picture book that we're having this time around, Voices in the Park, was written in the 90s of the past century, which makes it postmodern. Was it the 90s or perhaps the 2000, early 2000 or something? So it's in this neighborhood anyway. So picture
in
book.
19 in
Go ahead.
1999.
1990,
In
which
19
yeah, which makes it very postmodern, of course. Okay, so whenever people talk about postmodern, they focus on the idea of intertextuality and also on the idea of play. Whether play in its literal sense, being um, playful with the text, with the imagery, the manipulating of events using a parody. I will talk about all of that, and also intertextuality. We spoke about that. Okay, so there is this idea that whenever we talk about picture books, we talk about this combination of images and text or words, and of course they are used for or to achieve different types of effects. Remember, it can be didactic, it can be playful, it can be sheer um, entertainment. It can be all of that. Again, that would also make it appealing to children and also adult readers. So we're talking about the readers who happen to be children and even their carers, those who take care of those children. Again, we're talking about different levels of games, and that would, produce different types of interpretations. If we start off with a definition of postmodernism, we're not going to perhaps agree on one single definition because it's very slippery. The term is very slippery, and it can include a lot of characteristics, and some of those characteristics, they perhaps seem contradictory sometimes. So it's a loose cluster of characteristics, but again, some of them are obvious, and some of them keeps appearing in postmodern works. One of them is, of course, like I said, intertextuality. And intertextuality is about the use in one text of references or allusions from other texts. So in a text, you have references to situations and incidents and lines from other texts. So you can have, for example, a novel, and there are references to other novels, whether those novels are contemporary or steeped in the past. In our case here, in this picture book, we have references to other texts in other time periods, and there are also references and allusions to paintings and characters in movies. So this is called intertextuality. And if the reference is to imagery or images and media other than text, we call it visual intertextuality. So intertextuality is not restricted to postmodern text. You can you can apply it, of course, to texts that are modern. And this is what we have seen in the Tale of Peter Rabbit. It's not a postmodern text, but we can still find features of intertextuality in them. Again, the effect can be ludic or playful, and it can also be serious. I mean, you're trying to perhaps educate the reader about something from outside the text. You're trying to perhaps raise his or her awareness about the existence of Greek mythology and how rich Greek mythology is if you're using references from Greek mythology in your text. So again, it can be play, and play, when we talk about play, it can be play with words, with images, with the reader, also with the book as an artifact. So this is one of the elements of postmodernism that you can see and easily see in postmodern texts, and one of them happens to be Voices in the Park. So you also have play. You also have the idea of transgression. And we spoke long and enough about what transgression means and is. Remember, our perhaps first reference to transgression was when you did in your A to 30A classes, you did Othello, for example, and you did the Duchess of Malfi. In your AA 100A classes, you did Dr. Faustus. And what do they share? They share the idea of transgression, the fact that they challenge authority, the fact that they challenge established order. So transgression, when you challenge tradition and when you challenge authority, you are in the eyes of some people a transgressor, somebody who transgresses against something, somebody who violates the norms and the mores of society. So transgression here is about going against boundaries of appropriate behavior or other social conventions, which means that you don't act according to the expectations of society. Society, if you're male, society expects you to be muscular, to be assertive, to be strong. So this is what if you do otherwise, if you act in a different way, so you're transgressing. Society would expect a girl or a woman to be docile, to be in the manner of the sisters of Peter, if you still remember, in the Tale of Peter Rabbit, they are very docile, they are very obedient, non-assertive. But this is the typical image, and that this is the expectations of society, male as it is. If you're doing otherwise, but this is called transgression, and this is what we have seen happening in the Tale of Peter Rabbit. When we talk, for example, about Smudge, and as a girl, she's not acting like all the other girls in the eyes of traditional society. She's very assertive. She is very kind of forthcoming. She is she does things that you would expect Charles the male to do. Okay, transgression happens with Charles too, because he is not living up to the expectations of the male society. He is very weak. He is very wimpy. He is very submissive to his mom and her wishes. He doesn't say no at all. This is transgression, which is a quality of and a function of and a characteristic of the postmodern. What else do we have as an element or a characteristic? We have the idea of irony. And irony can operate on different levels. I mean, you can have a text that is perhaps a reworking of another text, and to comic effects. I mean, you're trying to parody at another text because you don't think that or you don't agree with the seriousness that the original text was written with. You believe that perhaps life is simpler. So you can have so many purposes and reasons why you're having irony in a text. Irony as one of the elements, it can be what you're parodying, and irony can be perhaps an aspect of the characterization or the plot development, or perhaps offering alternative meanings to those supposedly given and stated in the text. Another element would be role reversals, which is very close to the idea of transgression. So transgression happens when there are role reversals, and role reversals means that people are not, given or doing what they are supposed to do um, as expected by their society. Again, you would have in mind the idea of males behaving in a muscular way, females behaving in a feminine, obedient way. So we have role reversals. We have challenges to existing hierarchies and authority. And this is something that we also have seen with, like I said, smudge. This is something that we have seen even with Tale of Peter Rabbit, where Peter is obviously challenging authority and hierarchy, whether the hierarchy of his mom, whether it's authority in in the example of his mom. His mom is is a is a form of authority, and also Mr. MacGruger is another type of authority, and obviously he's challenging them. He is not obeying. So role reversal and challenges to hierarchies or authority happen when sometimes you have children become kings or leaders, when you have princes becoming servants sometimes, and again uh, the goal is sometimes laughter, and it can also be making a statement about what happens in society, and obviously the writer is trying to say that this is not the way it should something should go or happen. And then we have the idea of destabilization. And when I talk about stabilization, I talk about the breakdown in and of meaning. Um, um, Things don't run in a traditional way, in their traditional trajectory. When I talk about a pictured book, I expect it to run like we have seen with the Tale of Peter Rabbit, where you have a clear beginning, you have a middle, and you have a closure or an ending.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but are you reading from specific slides or what?
I'm
If
not sharing. You mean I'm not sharing?
yes, but
Okay.
if you don't
Right.
mind, thank you.
Okay. So again, we're talking about postmodern elements, and when we speak about those elements, we have this idea of intertextuality with its two different aspects, whether it is textual, intertextuality, where the focus is obviously on the text, and the reference is the text. And we also have visual intertextuality, where the reference is on images and paintings and sculpture from outside the text. And then another element, like we said, is play, whether we play with the words, the images, or whether we play with the reader. And then we spoke about transgression and the breakdown and the blurring of boundaries, whether we're talking about behavior, whether we're talking about, challenging orthodoxies and hierarchies, and then irony, which is very close to the idea of parody. And parody means that you perhaps use or you refer to or to you rework another text, a previous one. Rework means that you use its structure, but the effect is obviously different. So irony can be done on the level of characters, on the level of the plot, sometimes by giving or offering alternative meanings to, of course, different from those that people may pick on the surface level. Spoke about role reversals and the challenges to hierarchies as also one of the characteristics of the postmodern times. You challenge hierarchies and also you challenge authority. And then the idea of destabilization or the breakdown in meaning. So if you have any of the above, of course, you have destabilization where the story does not run in its natural trajectory, where you have a beginning and a middle and an end. No, this is not happening in the postmodern times. And we have a very telling and a very good example with Voices in the Park, where you don't have one single narrator from um, A to Z. You have four different narrators. And also, in order to capture the meaning, you need to have finished the whole picture book in order to be able to figure out what kind of story the writer is trying to tell, and its different parts. And so this stabilization or the breakdown in meaning, and like I said, you can have that happening if you have different voices telling the different aspects of the story, and sometimes they contradict each other, sometimes they challenge established truth, whether this truth is social or religious. So everything is undermined. Sometimes you don't have clear endings. Sometimes you don't have a resolution. Sometimes you have moral, what we call moral ambiguity, like we have seen in the tale of Peter Rabbit. Again, we focus on the idea of play or ludic. The text is very ludic or very playful. Playful in the sense that it doesn't give you clear answers. It does not give you clear-cut closures and conclusions. You have to engage with the text. And like I said, the article that we have is by Pete Goldstone, and it's called Postmodern Experiments, where she focuses on the idea of knowingness. And knowingness means that you have a text that call attention to itself. I mean, it tells you that I am a text. Make no mistake about it. Perhaps the fourth wall that we normally have in literary creation sometimes does not exist. You know that this is a text and this is not reality. So the idea of you being totally immersed in the text sometimes does not happen. This is not obviously the intention of the postmodern writer. So characters. In the past, you used to step into the text. You become part of the text. You feel for the characters. You fly away from the here and the now with them, with your imagination. Of course, you are totally immersed in the text. In our postmodern times and picture books, the characters step out of the text. and explicitly remind you that you are reading a book. Obviously, this makes it more complicated, but it can be a great fun for both young and old readers. And like I said, we examples that we have are normally taken from other, picture books, which is obviously fine. With Stone, the focus is on space and the use of space in children's picture book. She thinks of space in terms of how this space is reconceptualized, and it gives you meaning. But this time around, you don't get meaning from the word or the text. You have meaning from the space, and by the space, we're talking about those areas where you don't have text, and it can be the book design, it can be the fonts, like we said, it can be all the paratextual elements that we are highlighting. Again, the reference here to Macaulay's Black and White, which is, a picture book telling four stories in one. Well, we're not going to go into details about it because it would be very irrelevant. Again, part of Goldstone's analysis when it comes to the use of space has to do with the idea of paratext. And like I said, paratext means whatever is, or whatever we as readers used to consider perhaps insignificant, irrelevant. When I talk, for example, about the publisher and the details of the publisher, when I talk about the copyright sign, when I talk about perhaps somebody is giving us a testimony about how good or how bad the book is at the back of the book. So these are called paratextual elements, and they used to mean a little in traditional literature, but not anymore, I promise you. With postmodern texts and with postmodern picture books, they mean much and they mean a lot. So in its simplest definition, the paratext is space around the story proper, and it includes such things as tables of contents, copyright information, publisher details, prefaces, and papers, and other parts of the overall design. See, these are things that we didn't think about in the past. When I talk about publisher details, and we never stop and ask ourselves about that. When we talk about copyright information, who cares about that? If you're reading a novel, for example, you don't care very much about that, right? So not anymore. In post modern text, you have to think about these things. They mean a lot. So they are now recognized as a very essential part of every book. We used to overlook them because we used to think of them as irrelevant, as something that is not part of the story. Again, because it's the postmodern, and the postmodern is about confusing us, and it's about, also defying our expectations. Again, it's about the use of space. It's about the use of those information that we used to think very little of. Again, paratext can be used to play with the text. And it can also be one way of introducing this idea of playfulness, challenge towards or going against traditional ways of reading. Um, and we have examples, like I said, in black and white. For example, you have information or pieces of information about the Library of Congress cataloging. You have the publication data and the copyright information. And this is something that I want you to do today. After we finish from here, I would like you to go to the Voices in the Park and look at those kinds of information, the publication date, look at also the copyright details, and look at how they are written on the page, and look at their fonts, whether those fonts are different, and perhaps compare them to the fonts that you have inside the book, and see whether they bigger, smaller, and whether they mean something to you or it's all the same. Yeah, look at this and have a taste of this. Again, there is always, if we're talking about paratextual elements, we would talk about the in papers, we would talk about, illustrations in certain ways, and in and their effects, and whether, I mean, the use of coloring, for example, even before the stories start, and whether there is, um, I mean, even the titles and the subheadings, and whether there is play with them, there is punning involved, and all those kinds of things. Again, there were a number of experiments made on, especially on children, in order to see whether children also care about those paratextual elements, and to the amazement of those who did this kind of experiment, children reacted favorably, which means that, yeah, they meant something for them, and they derived considerable meaning from them. Um, this is Voices in the Park, the, the picture book that we're having. And like I said, it's by Anthony Browne. Again, the focus is on the how the words and pictures come together, and they work towards a full meaning. Browne himself was a leading British children's book author and illustrator, and he has been, or he has received, a lot of accolades and a lot of awards. He produced 40 children's titles. Sometimes he is the illustrator, sometimes he is the author and the illustrator, and sometimes he is only the author. But he is an illustrator, and he is a good one. Again, he is also known for his challenging narratives. He talks very, uh, um, you know, candidly about parenthood, childhood, children, and change, human behavior. And he has this fondness and love for gorillas. And he, in most of his work, gorillas assume a big place, like we have seen in Voices in the Park. Again, his work is a blend of surrealism and symbolism. And of course, by now you know what surrealism is. When I talk about surrealism, I talk about whatever is not seen, whatever is dreamlike, whatever has this blurry space between whatever is realistic and whatever is imaginary, uh, and it's more or less like, magic realism of a kind. This is called surrealism, and he is also, or he uses a lot of symbolism, and some symbolism is about suggestiveness. I give you a color, and from the color you can The color can evoke lots of emotions and feelings and significance. So symbolism can appear in colors, in the use of colors, in the use of seasons, in the use of symbols. I'm sorry, in the use of fonts and how they change to a certain effect. So symbolism is an art style often associating mystical significance with objects or events. So again, lots of people and scholars talk about Browne and his pictorial style, and how the different elements with him, whether pictorial or textual, are assembled and composed, and how he uses that to reveal much about the feelings and the thoughts of his characters. Again, part of this idea of symbolism would be the mood of the characters, the interconnections between them. And this is all conveyed to the readers through and in pictures. And one of his very famous picture books is called Gorilla. Again, you have this mix and blend between whatever is realistic and whatever is fantastic in the sense that it addresses the imagination and it captures the imagination in its flights. And lots of people are referring to this gorilla motif in his work, the fact that gorillas predominate, and they feature very predominantly in his work. And this is part of what he himself refers to as his long-term passion with them. And obviously, it's not only because he likes gorillas, and it's not only because it's personal, and the fact that he sees his father in them because he was gigantic and gorillas are very big and very gigantic. So that there is obviously more to the use of gorillas in Browne's work than just that. And lots of scholars spoke about it. One of them is Jane Donnan. And she sees symbolic significance in using gorillas. And she describes gorillas as functioning in a variety of ways. It can be decorative, like the birthday toy, for example. Can also have more significance than just that. Again, with Browne and his work, they are associated with the idea of masculinity, and they are normally associated with the idea of fatherhood. Remember, said that his father was big, and gorillas are big, so there is some kind of emotional link between gorillas. Perhaps they invoke in him memories about his father, and you need to also remember that his father died when he was only 17. So gorillas would bring in this autobiographical element and link. Again, there is also this idea. There was this very interesting interview with Anthony Browne, and this talk about references and intertextuality and the use of references to other works, especially this visual intertextual aspect to his work, because there was this reference to those famous painters that he draws in his work. Because several of his books contain reworkings of Magritte's paintings, for example. And it's very vivid, for example, in Voices in the Park. And talk especially about the hat motif that gets repeated in Voices in the Park. So it is very common. I'm talking about visual intertextuality. Very common in pictured books, and it is very common in the work of Browne. And this is perhaps part of the appeal. People may find this reference or visual and intertextual reference to other works, they may find appealing. And this perhaps may link the children as audience to, adults as audience. So again, people would ask, why would he have visual intertextual or visual intertextuality when he mentions or gives us paintings of those other paintings, when he reworks them? And some people say that this is paying homage to those writers or painters. Sometimes it's made for comic effects, spoofing and fooling and parodying. Again, the question remains. So he can be doing this for in order to parody the work, to perhaps bring in comic overtones as an homage and a tribute to the painter whose painting his feature. What about children? Would the child be able to understand this? Would the child be able to say that this is something that I have seen with another painter or another? Do they have the cultural knowledge to know that this is taken from other work? Yeah, sometimes, of course not. But perhaps Sandra Beckett's or Beckett, the scholar, is referring to the fact that this may be true, the idea that the child may fail to grasp the significance of something, may even fail to realize that the reworking of something from outside the text, but their ability to discover that or to know about that shouldn't be underestimated. Again, normally pictured books reflect their times, and they are normally adapted for their own generations. And if we talk about using visual intertextuality, obviously you're talking about a generation of readers, especially children, who are very well versed in digital technologies. Digital technologies are their thing, and so sometimes they can't miss it. They know, and they perhaps have more knowledge than what we give them credit for as adults. So again, some children's books are hybrid text. They play with conventions that are more usually associated with other media, like film. Sometimes you have that in a text. You have imagery and images, and you have also references to other media like cinema, movies, film. Again, children sometimes don't miss that, and sometimes this is part of the appeal that adults find in those kinds of books, because it addresses things that they are familiar with as adults. So if perhaps children would miss the link or the reference, for sure adults wouldn't miss that. Again, like I said, the examples that we are given here are all taken from other picture books. Again, we're focusing also on the idea that those picture books are normally very clear about their function as books. They break the illusion that what you are reading is reality. No, they keep telling you that no, this is not reality. This is a text, and you're reading a text. So we as readers are constantly pulled back from the story and reminded that it is a story, and those stories are there to be played with, um, whether they are stories or books. Again, some of the vivid images that breaks this illusion of reality would be this illusion that what you're reading is a story and it's not reality would be how those images are presented. So images show fragments of books, normally in a very desolate and very sorry state of repair. The right-hand images show a book being cut into pieces by scissors. So the text keeps referring to themselves as texts, and this points knowingly at elements of text. So you know that you're not reading. As I mean, you are in reality, and you shouldn't be taken away from that. So this is basically what this part is about, and again, this was a breakdown of what the article is about. And the article, if you still remember, was postmodern experiments. Let's now move. Perhaps I'll give you 5 minutes. I'll give you a 5-minute break, and then when we come back, we continue, inshallah. Yalla, I'll see you in 5 minutes. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We're back. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Clear? Am I audible enough? Okay. I'll take it that I am. Okay. So before we transition to the second part, if you guys have any questions so far, any questions? Anyone and everyone? Okay. Nice. So how? Okay. Noura is saying it's so far so good. Okay. So this is Voices in the Park in very simple terms. I mean, again, perhaps what is new about it is the focus on those paratextual elements, which I want you to take very seriously. And this is, like I said, something that I would like you to do after you finish from here. I would like you to go to the picture book and start looking at those paratextual elements, whether we're talking about how the title is written, what kind of font, what kind of color, look at the different details which we used to deem irrelevant and insignificant when we talk about those publication data, copyrights data, where the book was first published, and what kind of edition, and what edition number it is, and the other. Go to the back of the book and see if there is perhaps a blurb of a sort. Look at see if there is a foreword or is an introduction to the book. These things now count in the postmodern theory or critical analysis theory. You don't, critique a piece of work based on the text and the picture and full stop. No, you need to look at those surrounding paratextual elements as well. They make a difference, I promise you. Again, it's Voices in the Park, everyone, where there is also this level of suggestiveness to it, because we have pictures, and pictures are codes, if you ask me. Codes in the sense that they have something behind them. They have suggestiveness, and they have meaning behind the immediate meaning, the meaning that meets your eye, if you like. No, there is more to the meaning than just that. There is a code, and the picture is a code, and you need to break this kind of code. The picture can have colors. The picture can be tilted in a certain way. The characters can be presented in a certain way. Look at the changing seasons. Look at even the characters. Remember, we spoke about this idea of gorillas and why gorillas and not human beings are used. That this is, of course, part of a larger project that we call anthropomorphism. But there is obviously more to it than just being perhaps a fable or an anthropomorphic piece of work. It also has symbolism behind it. I mean, perhaps to naturalize us as readers. Remember, this is what we said at one point. If you have human beings, and this picture book critiques this idea of classes, different classes, and how we have this class divide in society. So if I am a reader who belongs to the upper class, and I look at Smudge and her father, I would look on them in a perhaps a patronizing kind of way, because I belong to a higher class. Perhaps I can share the sentiment with this lady, the mother of Charles, who looks down on them. Correspondingly, if I happen to be a poor kind of reader, belong to the lower classes, and I look at characters who are upper class, I may have some kind of antagonism and animosity and perhaps envy towards them because of this eternal kind of clash between the classes, and they never meet, they never get or they never perhaps reach out to each other in good faith and create the harmony that everybody hopes for. No, we don't have that in reality. So perhaps this is one big reason why we're having gorillas in this piece of work, along with the other personal reasons that we spoke about in the Brown, associating gorillas with the figure of his father, gigantic as it was, and the fact that he lost him very early at 17. Um, Let me see where we're headed with that. So Voices in the Park, again, it is a well-written picture book. And from the discussions, we can almost tell that this is um, a true statement. Of course, it would be very early on if you're reading an article and it tells you right from the very beginning that it is a very well-written picture book. You need some kind of justification for that, and the justification is coming, as we're going to see. So again, it's a picture book that was written for both children and young adults, and it was published in 1999. And it has been, you know, it has been selling very well uh, ever since. It was one of the top sellers. Again, what is it that we think it does, or we think it gets across to us? It tells us, or it allows us to see life through different characters. And again, that would point to the idea that truth is not absolute, not anymore. And truth is up for grabs. It depends on your angle of vision. It depends on your perspective. It depends on your demographics. It depends on what class you belong to. That's a lot of variables and factors, as a matter of fact. In terms of category, this book belongs to what we call the contemporary realistic fiction. So it is realistic, yes, it is true, but it is highly suggestive, of course. It's highly symbolic, and that wouldn't take away from realism. It's still very realistic. I mean, the idea that you have gorillas also does not make it less realistic, I promise you. So what do we know about realistic fiction? We know that it is vivid, it has realistic settings, it has credible multi-dimensional characters. And the problems are very relatable. The problems are very believable. Uh, um, all these things apply to Voices in the Park. It has a very plausible story that could happen in today's world. The idea that we have an upper class mother and her son, and they would walk their dog to the park, and then they meet other people who may not be of the same socioeconomic status as they are. This is very plausible. This is something that we can have in real life. The characters in the story make it easy for children to relate to through use of language and how they interact with each other. And when you look at the characters and how they act and react, this is very realistic. The language used the kind of dress they are in, even the kind of interaction. I mean, the setting itself, a park, yeah. I mean, so people go to parks and they meet and interact. Again, the idea of having gorillas as characters would pop up. Again, that is part of how we can relate to the story. This is perhaps an easy way of perhaps finding appeal, because children, if it is intended for children, like animals, of course, and also because having animals would not in any way alienate any of the reading demographics. Remember, the reading demographics and the reading classes. Remember what I said about this idea that you may be a poor reader, poor in the sense that your economic status is low, and you can feel antagonistic towards characters that are high class. And correspondingly, you can be a rich reader reading about low class characters, and you feel all kinds of disgust and aloofness towards them. So if the characters would have been depicted as human, readers might refuse to relate to the characters due to preconceived bias about their race, socioeconomic class, or even the gender. And of course, if you're reading with such a prejudice, that would limit your ability and willingness to make personal connections with their experiences. So lacking human elements is good news, obviously, uh, because in this way, you as a reader are more likely to relate to those characters, or and I identify with them, feel what they feel, and go through their trials and tribulations. And also, and this is very interesting, when animals are depicted, characters are depicted as animals, there is this likelihood that you would focus more on other more important elements, artistic elements, for example. And those artistic elements also would imply socioeconomic status and gender roles. So how are the characters portrayed? You have the character of the mother, and how she is dressed and how she behaves and talks, and that would imply wealth. And again, it gives us this stereotypical image of wealthy women at the time. The character, on the other hand, is portrayed as, dressed not in the best of ways. Uh, um, Again, what he says and how he is sitting and his mood would imply poverty and the attitudes of poor men. What is perhaps interesting is the idea that children are different because they transcend and challenge gender stereotypes. Um Smudge, the girl, is doing stuff that you would expect of Charles, and Charles is doing stuff that you would expect of girls. Smudge is very assertive, is very frank and candid, and she is also taking things into her hands, behaving in a perhaps a muscular way, while Charles is weak, submissive, wimpy, And these are things that you wouldn't expect of a boy. And then there is this focus on those textual elements in the picture book. One of them would be the fact that you have 4 separate stories and each has its own voice or narrator. And all of them would blend together at the end to create a semi-ambiguous ending. The ending is up for grabs. Up for grabs in the sense that you can come up with your own conclusions as what will happen next. So as a reader, you are led to fill in the gaps. and then you have reference to elements that would help the text. When you spoke about the font styles and the fact that we have different types of font styles, and that is meant to reflect the different voices of and of each character. For example, when we talk about Charles' mother, we have this formal Times New Roman kind of thing, and I think it's this is this is uh, I mean the font that we're using and that we're writing this article with. See how formal it is, how upright it is, how clear it is. So to represent Charles' mother, Browne uses a font like Times New Roman. Again, what do we know about this kind of font? We know that it makes the letters look tall, adding tails on to the top and the bottom of the letters. And it is a very formal type of form. And it is done, of course, intentionally to reflect the proper type to suggest cultural refinement. That no matter how much we may despise this lady for her arrogance and um, class consciousness, we still think that she is culturally refined. She's upper class and she speaks in a certain way and she behaves in a certain that would indicate, I mean, the font and the use of Times Romans would reflect cultural refinement. If you go to Smudge's father, you're going to see that the font type is less formal and it is bolded. And there is this noticeable rounding of the letters, and they are not as rigid as the ones that we have seen with the lady. Again, this informal bold text, along with the type of grammar of the sentences, would lead you to conclude that he is a working class person. Again, using bold would make you perhaps believe and think that he has a deep, rough voice. With Charles, it's different. His font is barely visible because he is very, it would indicate, and when you look at the picture, he's very thin, and it can be a sign of weakness, that he has a small voice, and it may also suggest and indicate that he is fearful of something, fearful of authority, can be the mother, as a mother, an authority figure. And then you have Smudge, and of course her font is more playful, is more fun. It would resemble the voice of a playful child, very similar to her father's font. Hers is also portrayed in bold, but it doesn't give her the deep voice that we have expected with her father. It looks more hearty and playful. So you see, the font can make all the difference, and this is something that we never thought of and talked about, even with the Tale of Peter Rabbit. And then you have point of view. Remember what we said about those different points of view as given by four different voices and by four different narrators. And there are situations where it is very clear what kind of visions and points of view and ideas those characters hold, like the mother, for example. Right from the very beginning, we see how she looks at people and how she behaves. Remember when she referred to Albert as a mongrel, when she referred to Smudge as a very rough-looking child. Obviously, all of that tells us very clearly that she looks down at them. And then you have the second point of view, and that would be of the father. And as given, he is portrayed as helpless, as sad and upset and angry because he is out of work. And also this sense of, submissiveness, and the fact that he wishes that he has or had half of the energy of the dog. He has his own world, and we don't know much about him because he is so absorbed and so immersed in his own issues and problems. And then you have Charles, um, who obviously views things differently from his mother, but of course he cannot express this right in front of her. If she believes that Albert is a mongrel and is like a cheap dog, he believes that Albert is a friendly dog. Um, he also, his perception of Smudge is different. He believes that she is good. She does things in a very capable way. And even the adjectives that he uses with her, funny, amazed, great stuff. And then we have, of course, Smudge and her point of view and how she sees everybody. Now, obviously, she has more vibrant views of the other characters, which would indicate that she is ahead of her age. She may be young, but she has the experience and the wisdom that the mother and her father lack. Her interaction with Charles' mom made her comment as to how she was. She refers to her as a silly twit. She used to think that Charles is a wimpy kid, but she had changed this perception when she got to talk to him and deal with him. She believes that he is a victim. So out of those four characters, Mudge pays more attention to the emotions of those who are around her. Look at Charles also. He undergoes a transformation, a change. He is at the beginning very wimpy, very weak, depressed, but over time he becomes happy and perhaps more independent. That's why his mother is looking for him. Obviously, when he goes back to his mother at the end, he's totally changed. And he has this wish that he can meet Smudge again. Again, if you look at Smudge's father, he is so stuck in his own world, focusing on looking for a job and trying to hold on to hope. If you look at the mother, Charles' mother, it seems that she is more concerned about herself and her dog, and they are perhaps more important to her than her own son. So again, when you look at these characters and their points of view, you as a reader would understand more about them and the dynamics that surround them in the story. If we look at the artistic elements, remember when we talk about style and the style of art, we said that Voices in the Park has both, has those impressionistic artistic part to it, and it also has the surrealistic artistic part. So when we talk about impressions, we talk about symbolism and how things uh, um, are more or less like codes, and you need to break the codes and go beyond them and look at their significance. So you would look at, for example, certain illustrations and representations that would tell you, for example, that time changes. You look at, again, the different seasons and how they reflect the change, not only of time, the change of perhaps mood and atmosphere. Again, when the character speaks, you need to look at in the background, look at the trees and how they change colors and the changing of the colors of the leaves, representing fall. That would apply, for example, to the mother. How we have those small bits of color, brown, yellow, orange, and red, among many, and those dabs of colors. Again, they can tell you a great deal. And then look at the dogs, Victoria and Albert, when they are playing. If anything, of course, they are in synergy and harmony, and the trees behind them use spring colors, pink, reds, greens, and whites, and that would, give you the impression that they are happy, and the atmosphere is a happy one, the blooming of flowers. And then Smudge and Charles, when they are playing, again, the background is nice. But look at the colors when Charles is pulled away with his mother and they are leaving. Obviously, the atmosphere becomes more pre-winter. Many of the trees have lost their leaves, the branches are sagging, and the colors of the bushes turn into dark colors. And the colors used in this sense are dark green, black, brown, and a mix. So if we look at the surrealistic part of it, which means that you have those elements that mingle reality with dreams and the imagination, and it gives you some kind of blurred perception of the world around you. You have just that. You look at the mother and how she behaves. You look at the characters. You look even at the use of the gorillas and the significance of that. Because when you see gorillas and they behave like human beings, this is very surrealistic, and it borders on the fantastic, because this only happens in fairy tales. And then you look at the illustrations and the borders and where the characters are are and what kind of backgrounds there are, where the lines are drawn between the characters. It can tell you a great deal about the different separations that we have, the class divide between those who have and those who do not have, the poor, for example. Borders, whether they become slim or thick, wavy, without lines or with lines. We have the example of smudges illustrations, where the pictures are either placed in the middle of the page without borders or are of a full page pleat. It can it can tell you about her vibrance and the vibes that she brings to the part and everything. And here we have also talk about the lines and the shapes and the textures and the colors. And these are things that I would like you to look for yourself. Nobody should spoil it for you by telling you what is happening. Again, it's about the line that divides. Of course, you know that with picture books, with drawings, you start with a line and then you do everything. You start with the line, and the line is your point of departure. You can build a whole lot of things around the line. So you need to see where the line is drawn and whether it draws the characters or it draws between the characters, creating separation lines and partition lines, boundaries of a sort. Again, what is outstanding about the line, and it can be a clear line, it can be the lamppost that we have in one of the pictures, and it clearly draws this line of demarcation between the different classes. It shows the social class divide that we have, having the mother and Charles as one class, the high class, and you have Smudge and her father as the poor class. And then there is this talk about the postmodern elements in this picture book. And one of them is the non-linearity, the fact that you don't have a traditional story where you have a beginning and a middle and an end, to the extent that you need to read the whole book in order to kind of grasp the meaning and in order to kind of reconstruct the story and come up with a story in the first place. So non-linearity is one aspect of the postmodern, the idea of unconnected plots. And this is something that we have seen in Voices in the Park, where you have distinct voices, each describing their own version of the same walk to the park. Also, the idea of intertextuality, and we spoke long and enough about it, when you have references to outside the text, and it can be textual references to other books and other titles, and it can also be visual references referring to paintings and sculptures and other things. So the notion of intertextuality, like I said, would refer to all kinds of links between two or more texts. Okay, you can do that in order to achieve irony, parody, literary and extra literary allusions. You can have direct quotations from other works. You can have indirect references to previous texts. You can have a fracturing of a well-known pattern and so on. Again, intertextuality is very prevalent in Voices in the Park. There are those references to the Mona Lisa, to Hal's Laughing Cavalier, to Punch's Scream. So these are all Even um, the newspaper that the father is reading can also be something intertextual. And you also have Margaret's hat motif. We spoke enough about why we would use intertextuality and different reasons. Remember, we said that this can be a parody. This can be educational. You're trying to educate the reader about the existing of texts. It can be entertaining. It can be securing the appeal of adult, audience. They find something that they are familiar with. Again, this is a reference to the visual intertextual references that we have just mentioned. This is obviously what the whole thing is about. Again, the talk is about postmodernism, non-linearity, and its reasons, ambiguity, and irony, the images, whether those images are symbolic or surrealistic, um, and the use of a picture book as a hypertext that would refer you to other text and other texts. And then the idea that basically the novel or the picture book is about this class divide, the fact that you have different classes, and obviously the encounter is a socioeconomic one. We have people in who are high class and people who are not, and obviously the idea of them reaching out to each other doesn't seem to work. And this is basically what the whole picture book is all about. If you have any questions, come to the mic. Okay, bye. What do I want you to do? I would like you to again go and watch the video. It's very informative and it's very encompassing. It sums up the whole idea. And I'll see you next week, inshallah. And then when I see you, we're starting the other side of truth. If you have time, I would like you to go through the other side of truth. Read it. You will also see or have videos on the other side of truth. Get to know what it is about, what the plot is. If you have time, I would expect you to read it, inshallah. Somebody is raising their hand. Go ahead. Okay. So drop
Yes,
your hand. Go
me.
ahead.
Um, uh, what can I know what or yeah, according to the first quiz, no, to the midterm, um, the type of questions are short answers and one essay, right? Or what?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So the midterm exam dates are now out on the university website. The exam covers the first three works. I mean, The Tale of Peter Rabbit, Voices in the Park, and The Other Side of Truth. And it's normally two parts or two sections. You have a short answers section where you normally have like um, through three short answers topics, and you choose to write on two. And you have the essay part where you have two topics and you're supposed to choose to write on one of them. You write an essay. An essay wouldn't be less than perhaps 300 words. I think we'll have time to do an MTA revision class. Let's next week try to finish the other side of truth so that we can have time for a revision class on the three works, inshallah. So, yeah, until then, I wish you all the best. Yeah, assalamu alaikum. Bye bye.